Good afternoon, everyone. Do you hear me? Yes, okay. So welcome, and I checked with all the panelists, nobody bites, so you are welcome to go closer. It will be nice to see the face. My name is Laurent Choppe. I'm heading the life science activity of Cukierman Investment House, which is an investment bank based in Tel Aviv. We are celebrating our 33 years anniversary this year. We are helping startups in Israel and in Europe to find partners, investors, and buyers. So we are really in the transaction activity. And as such, because we know very well the ecosystem in Europe and in Israel, we have been asked to moderate this panel with a very specific experience from the panelists that I'm going to introduce, and they will each of them will introduce themselves and what they do and what's the relation with the topic today of how regional hubs are driving innovation. So I will start with Christina, who is close to me. She's head of asset management in EIT Health based in Munich.
Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, I'm very honored to be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do at EIT Health, but starting with an introduction. So I'm a molecular biologist by training. I used to do research at universities like many other molecular biologists, but I also knew that this was not the way forward for me. So I entered into the business side in a small venture firm, then moved from more like the venture creation space into entrepreneurial. And then I joined EIT Health 3 years ago to set up a mentorship and support program to really support early innovation in Europe, and early, I would say, and mid-stage innovation, to really make sure that we as an organization foster the scale-up phase in Europe, which is challenging. And then I recently transitioned into head of asset management. So what does asset management mean in the context of a publicly funded program? That is trying to generate a little bit of this public-private relationship building and ensuring that we as a public entity can also participate and co-create some of the success stories in Europe. And that obviously needs more than just, a light touch early on and then, goodbye and good luck, but it actually needs a much more cultivating and nurturing what we help putting into place, and then make sure that they come all the way to the end where we can hand them over to Laurent. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina. You will have more time to develop some examples. So I'm turning towards Cornelia. Cornelia is the head of investor relations in Biosaxony cluster in Leipzig.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm also honored to be on the panel today, and I'm happy to bring some of Central Germany into Basel and into Switzerland. I have been working mainly in the industry and also in the VC world for the last 25 years, and I've been asked early this year to join Biosaxony to develop investor relations, i.e. get more investors into the region, and then B, also develop financial structures that help our rather fast-growing cluster of medtech and biotech and healthcare companies to grow and be beyond the region, European and also very international. So happy to share more on the region and what we do in the Biosaxony cluster with you.
So thank you, Cornelia. So I'm now asking Shlomo Assa, who is the president and co-founder of Acclaro, based in Rhode Island, US, and highly experienced in medical aesthetic cluster.
Thank you, Laurent. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shlomo Assa. I'm an engineer by training. I did not run engineering. I've been doing it for over 40 years. I love engineering. Everything I learned about finance, I learned from the street, being an entrepreneur. I'm a co-founder of Acclaro Corporation. Acclaro is a medical device located in the United States, in Smithville, Rhode Island. We are made in the US, real product. Building a system, a laser-based system for improving skin appearance for all skin types, from white to dark, for all ages, daughter, mother, and grandmother. And this is our first product, and very happy to be here and share my experience.
Thank you, Shlomo. And now Yael Villa, who is CEO of CytoReason from Tel Aviv.
Yeah. So thank you, Laurent. This is my first time here at SAC, so I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm Yael Villa. I am COO at CytoReason. CytoReason is a small startup compared to what's going on here. We are aiming to build an AI based on rich data in order to accelerate that drug development, and I will go into it during the panel. During my more than 30 years of professional life, I work in the academia, I work in the government, in the private sector, multinational, so everywhere in Israel, which is a small country. And therefore, I would like to share here my experience and how I think this sync and collaboration between all the entities can accelerate innovation. My PhD is in mathematics and statistics, and all my life I was working on data science-based type of product solutions, even before it was called data science. It was machine learning or others.
Thank you very much, Yael. So, I forgot to say, because everyone say its background, I'm a veterinary surgeon by background. That's why I'm saying I'm not biting. Still people in the back. So the topic of today we'll be discussing how regional hubs can be driving innovation in healthcare, HealthTech, biotech sector, because it's broader than the health tech, obviously. And we have everyone here has good experience in founding and growing companies in regional clusters. And we have Europe, Germany, US, and Israel here representing. It's a good, broad enough panel to understand how those organizations are actively supporting tech transfer and seed phase and growth towards spin-off through their service and infrastructure. So I will start with, we prepared a lot. The topic is very broad, so I will let you decide which question you take, because everyone prepared according to his experience and expertise. The main question is, the first question is not the main. How those clusters or regional hubs differ in Europe versus what we see in the US and what we see in Israel, which is as well a unique ecosystem. Who would like to just give a snapshot on the difference that we see today? You want to start?
I can start. I have a very simple. In the United States, there's none. You're on your own. If you want to succeed, figure out where you want to place the business, what do you want to do, figure out who helps you, and good luck. There's very little that the government or any assistant association will do for you. So
Yes, I think we are very lucky in Europe, but we also need to use it wisely. And I mean, one of the things, it's survival of the fittest in the US. I think we have a little more socialist point of view here in Europe, which is a good thing, but we also need to make sure that what we do right. And we need to make sure that we select the right innovation and we educate the innovators, because as you all know, academia is very grounded in Europe and it's very traditional and very old-fashioned in some way. There's very little entrepreneurship being taught. So this means that we have excellent science, but we have very few entrepreneurial experience around and very few educations of the potential new entrepreneurs. So you tend to end up with a lot of companies that has very little business acumen. And what we see in our work that I do across Europe, so we are, not a regional, we work with regional clusters, but we work pan-European, is that we often see companies that are late stage, but have a lot of early stage problems. And that's the problem in Europe, because there's just very little experience, there's very little know-how, there's there's very few success stories. So we don't have this ecosystem around to really build experience in generating the right tools and products. So that's one of the things that we are trying to address.
Cornelia?
Yeah, maybe I can take that really down to a region. And I don't know how familiar you are. We are located mainly in Leipzig, so we are mainly funded through the state of Saxony so far. And maybe just to throw some numbers into you, we are a bit behind in developing regarding Munich or Regensburg. I think they are 10 years ahead. But nonetheless, for the last 20 years, the state, also with European money, funded about 1 billion into life science. And if you look what has come out of that, we have been able to more than double the size of life science company, up to 300 in the region, which means a workforce of now 15,000, which is tripled from where we started. And regarding revenue, 2 billion, which is 4 times of where we started off 20 years ago. So this is the achievements. I totally agree with you, Christina, that we are having lots of research. We have 15 universities in the area. We have 30 institutes, and there's lots of innovation coming out. But once they really start to transfer into companies, that's where the puzzle starts, where we are missing funding and where we are missing supporting. So Biosaxony is trying to really build a one-stop service along the entire TRL line. We really try to get funding in the early stage all the way to a good running accelerator in the later stage where they are ready to get products into the market. And regarding regulatory reimbursement to really help with all of these questions startups have.
Thank you. Yael, you have a double hat, of
so
course.
I don't know what Israel is part of the Europe, the US. I don't know. It's a mix.
It's part of the same drive towards innovation.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you now, in your experience, especially because you have experience before you joined this AI company, but can you just elaborate on what are the specificity of the Israeli one, and especially in the artificial intelligence where you are completely involved today?
So before I joined CytoReason, most of my experience was in the cybersecurity field, which is the innovation field of Israel, because there is a lot of technologies coming from the army, a lot of technologies coming from the industry, so there is a mix. And now I think in the last 7-10 years, there is a lot of interest in Israel in life science as well. I think there is good things and bad things going on. So there is a very good relationship. The academia is very industrialized, as opposed to what we are saying that it's in Europe. So every investigator has this industry colleague that they work together. A lot of incentives coming from the government to do that. For collaboration between academia and industry and HMOs that have the data. So there is a lot of incentives. So this is what's working really nicely. What is working, I think, less good is how this will evolve moving forward. So for those companies that are at very early stages, work nicely. But then when the companies start growing, there are issues. I don't think there is a good methodology for Israel as a government to do the incentive for larger companies. And I think we need to move to that stage. And another thing that I would like to say about what's going on in Israel, we know how to work with other entities. So there is a lot of regulation, how to work, what to do with the data, what to do with the IP. So it's quite easy. So we are also working with the EU. So we have incentive from the EU. We are part of those incentives as well. But we have also local regulation that help us very much to move forward. But as I said, this is for early stages companies, and we need to move forward with the companies that are more mature.
Thank you. Now, going into more details in terms of those clusters or those hubs, there's no specific name. What is the most important need in terms of support? Is it infrastructure? Is it HR? Is it funding? And how do you see the main needs of those new companies? And there is another question related to that. Are usually the entrepreneurs newbies or more serial entrepreneurs? Then the needs are different, or when they work with you? So anyone can take it. Oh, Shlomo.
Well,
Okay, we'll do that.
I can try to define that. Of course, every business needs funding, but funding is not the key ingredients for success. I've seen a lot of colleagues who have funded, well-funded company who've been very successful at the beginning, became very unsuccessful because they got drunk from the money.
Drunk?
Drunk. They got overconfidence that they've got the funding, and they become very, very reluctant to make the right decisions. So company needs to be stayed hungry. Hunger creates the drive, and the drive is what creates the success. I'm talking in American entrepreneurs, right? So the number one, you want to have a driven individual that basically have the desire to succeed, have the drive, and have the vision to take it. That to me is more important than anything else. Funding is important, but funding will not make the company succeed. The entrepreneur, the driving energy of the entrepreneur will make it succeed.
So why would they need support from a cluster?
Well, the cluster is providing something different. If I take what the European Union is doing, that's what the NIH in the US is doing. NIH, or Department of Defense, through the SBIR, the Small Business Innovative Research, right? But for me, as a business starter, to go to SBIR, to go to NIH, to ask for grant, I'm not important enough, not big enough, and I'm going to compete with 100 professors and 50 universities. I have no chance to succeed. So as a matter of practical sense, I don't even try. I don't know how it works in Europe. Then the innovation comes to universities, got to get to reduce to practice, to somebody to run a business. I'm talking about when you have an idea and you have a business, whether you license the technology university or you have the idea from a friend or you just woke up with the idea. What makes you successful is the drive. If you have the drive to succeed, you're willing to work hard, and you believe in what you do, you'll succeed.
So, Christina, once you have an entrepreneur with this enthusiasm, what do you do?
So I think it's a combination. There's a lot of right in this. I think what we are fighting in Europe is a mindset issue. So we in general tend in Europe to be minimizing the risk rather than maximizing the return. So this means that we are not very prone to take risks, and we tend to stay in our own little area. I think what we are trying to teach and what we are trying to help young researchers with and young innovators is really try to think big and bold, and step out of your comfort zone and really try to take some risks. Sometimes the rewards are much higher, and this is what we need. So moving from this, we have a platform, it's nice to have, but we don't really want to make any decision on the direction of this platform, to saying, if you want to take this platform and this needs to be something, you need to identify the product that captures the value of your platform to the extent, because it's the first product that drives the platform forward in the end. And this is very challenging, especially if you're a young entrepreneur, but even if you are, serial entrepreneur and has maybe operated a business 20 years ago where the science market was a little bit different. I think, you need to define your product, and that is in essence what's going to take your company forward. And this is sometimes very difficult. So if you do that early, and then coming back to, late stage companies with early stage problem, if you don't have a defined product in the beginning, it's very difficult to strategically navigate the road forward. And if you have that early on, and that's something that we are helping with, if you can get to the right people who understand this kind of how you build a business from the ground up, asking the right questions at the right time, I think you are set up for success. And then, of course, they come into the second challenge, which is the scale-up phase. I think we are very good set in Europe, both on the private VC side, but also for all aspects of non-dilutive funding, which are vast here in Europe, which is a good thing. And this is something we can all, certainly help you with as a European organization, but also considering how to push it to the growth phase, where we need much larger ticket than it's around in Europe. We need support from organizations like the EIB, European Investment Bank, who has developing creative solutions for the growth funding stage, where you need not just 10, 15 million, but maybe 100 to 200 million to really reach to the next value inflection point.
Okay. Cornelia, you wanted to describe as well the way you
Yeah, I'm happy to
are
pick that
involved.
up. And I think what Shlomo and also Christina said fit right into our views and what we have seen so far. I think mindset is really one when it comes down. Lots of young entrepreneurs coming out of the university have a very cozy environment, getting grants. And then you live from one grant to the next grant and you think, I'm going to do it this 2 years and 3 years, but they don't think big. And what I really appreciate traveling to Israel and also for the US, you start thinking big when you start your company because you don't have another option. Israel as a market is too small to get stuck. And in Germany to think, I have my home market and I make myself comfy there. So that's just the wrong approach. I wish we had more inter-counter with Israeli and US companies to bring that mindset also into our startups. Number two, and that's what Christina said, funding. Funding comes in and you said, funding is not the way to success, but it's needed. We have quite a few companies that have reached with entrepreneurial mindset the state of really entering into the market, and then it ends because then we have not enough capital, private capital, not governmental capital in the area that takes these companies to the next stage. So and you said EIB or EI, like the European bigger pots, I think there needs to be more thinking in having innovative, transformational funding opportunities. And that's not just Germany, that's whole of Europe. And I wish we would be thinking about those more.
Yael,
I would like
to add to the
something.
question, do you really believe location count or it's the same problem?
No, I agree and I disagree on some points. So, first of all, I'm happy that you are saying that we know in Israel how to do it big, because my feeling is that we are very technical people. We want to do innovation, research, but we are not thinking big enough. But you think we are thinking, and so I'm happy. So what I said before, that funding is at the early stages not an issue. Okay, to bring the POC, to bring a technology, to prove the technology, to have 1 or 2 customers, that's something that Israel knows how to do. Scaling is an issue. And I think what Shlomo said about, you need to be an entrepreneur, but you need to understand the business you are dealing with. It's not enough to make innovation. You need to have a product that someone needs. And I think that a lot of innovation coming from Israel is too premature, too enthusiastic, new technology, new something. And I think now it's about time to start looking about the business, about the product, about the scaling, and help the companies there, okay, at that stage, which is not that easy. I think it's easier to get investment for a cool technology rather than for a product and to scale and the business plan and everything.
Okay, you have been talking about the role of the hubs in the beginning, in the early stage. Is there a change today with in the last panel we heard about the difficult funding situation for the last 18 or 24 months, but do you see a change in how and when the VC or the corporate fund, because it works with both, interfere with the startup you are helping? Is there a change today, or it's still the same intervention or jumping into the project. Do you see something very specific to the current difficult period or challenging?
I think what we see is that most investors are very busy working on their portfolio companies and they have little time to look for new opportunities because they're really trying to keep the ones they have alive in this, at the desert of funding in the moment. I do believe that we're going through ups and downs all the time, and we probably hit the bottom is my hope, and we are moving into a better time, not the time we had.
It cannot be worse.
No, but it's not the time we had in 2021, 2022 maybe, but it's more, a more natural time for investments. I also think that a down period also creates opportunities, right? Because where the market was probably exploding and valuations were too high, this is also now an opportunity to devalue. It's tough for the companies that raised back then when the valuations were high because they now have to go through tough times. But if they succeed in this is an opportunity to build a more solid business case going forward that is attractive to many more investors. So it's not just about if you have a 50 million house and you want to sell it, there's a very few people who can actually afford to buy it. It doesn't make, it's probably easier to sell a 1 million house because there are many more people that are just interested in buying it because that's the league they are playing in. So I think, a difficult market is also an opportunity, and I'm very confident that we are moving into better times very soon.
Shlomo, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I see the things a little bit different. I sat there today and listened to the investor panels. And one of the themes that was across the board was it takes longer and we're going to argue about the evaluation. I get it. Okay, investors is scared. They don't want to spend their money, so it takes them longer and they want to get a better deal. I get it. But there's a reason why we are where we are. And I think nobody talks about what's the problem with supply chain, why shipping product costs so much more money, what happened with the chip shortages. And I think this is the reality that I'm living with. I'm living as an American company. I need to, when I'm operating in the global markets, I sell it right now in 16 countries besides the US, and I'm planning to expand to world domination. That's kind of like what my team talks about, world domination. So supply chain, getting components, getting material, getting people to work is a challenge. And that's one of the things that I did not hear investors talk about. How can we actually address this? Because that's part of the problem why there is economical slowdown. There's a strain right now on supply because people are not working as hard as they used to work. So there's shortages of components, shortages of supply, shortages of manpower all over the world. And that is part of the reality that, for me, it's not just investment, it's not just funding. It's something that I need to figure out every day. How do I overcome those problems? Because I got to ship products. I got to make them to ship them.
Are those issues addressed by the regional hub? You believe?
No, these are. I don't really know who needs to address them at what government level. But I'll give you an example. We are used to fuel or gas or gasoline or to be commodity. Being traded on the world, and people are playing with currencies and playing with the supply and demand to control what the price we pay in the pump, right? It almost feels to me that a lot of the big companies are doing the same thing with chips. I'm talking about microcontrollers and componentry that may be gearing towards getting them in the world commodity and playing with supply and demand to try to create a price fluctuation. I don't really quite understand this, but I see some difficulties, some challenges. And for me as a business owner, I got to figure out a solution. It's not only money.
Cornelia?
And that was a perfect example where a regional hub can come in. We can't really certainly shorten supply chain issues when components are missing, not in all cases, but we certainly have a big network where we can try to find those second sources in the area. And that is not just on components, but that is also on partners to conduct studies, that is on partners to have the right lab spaces with the right equipment, to really potentially source certain laboratory equipment that is in one location, but it's needed in another, to really have like more communities to say, okay, one buys it, but 10 can use it. And that's where we are trying to be creative, to help the different companies in the cluster, to help the startups in the accelerator. And this is what we have been told to be thankful for, to overcome shortages on a daily basis.
So not to disagree with anything, I don't really understand how the German economy operates enough to be able to comment on that. But I'll give you an example, okay? I make plastic parts in China. China is the best place in making plastic parts, period. The governments, both my government and other governments, are fighting politically with China. I don't ever say that. They put tariffs, and they're making it very, very difficult to get parts of China without offering me a replacement. So I have to take my parts from China. If I send them to the US, I'm going to pay 25% tariff. My business cannot take that. So I have to put them on a boat, ship them to Israel, paint them in Israel, so add some value. Israel is a free trade with China. And bring them from Israel to the US. Israel is free trade with the US. I spend 16 weeks on boats of parts just to avoid paying 25%. And, you know, it's the reality of what the economy requires to do. I mean, if you want to build a business, you got to learn to deal with the reality of what the challenges in front of you. And it's not always very easy by pushing a button and say, let me tell this politician what I need to hear from him. It doesn't work like that. So.
Christina.
Yes, let me use the opportunity of lobbying a little bit for our organization, although obviously we cannot solve the global economy today, because then we wouldn't be sitting here at this panel for this audience, but probably somewhere else. So I think that this is maybe a good example of where we, as a European community, actually have a lot of resources we can tap into. So I'm going to flag one initiative that is been brought up about in Europe, and that's called the important projects of common European interest. So this is a project, or an initiative that is trying to address some of the manufacturing shortages in Europe in all kinds of industries. But we are working together with the European Commission on part of this to address anything related to health. So this means manufacturing of medical products, etc. in Europe. So I do actually think that we can, there are initiatives that are addressing this top down and not just bottom up. And I think we are very strong in Europe. Now it is at a different level because it's a lot of lobbying and politics and policy making and so on. But this is why I think that we exist to be able to bring value across the whole life cycle, all stakeholders in the environment, which means government, policy makers, regulators, payers, everything is somehow something that we try to address. That is not often easy to do because there's a lot of admin costs and it costs a lot, but I think the value that we bring in the long run certainly merited.
So I would ask, thank you, it's very useful to know that you can influence this type of manufacturing or supply chain issues. What about regulatory support and as well regulatory discrepancies between US, Europe mainly, and with the new MDR difficulties? What did you see, and what did you see on including in any field? Shlomo?
Yeah. So first of all, regulatory and advice, they don't go together. I mean, regulatory is a barrier to entry. You need to pass the barrier to get permission to sell in every country. So every country in the world makes their own rules, and there is no unified rules. If you want to sell in Brazil, you got to go within visa. You want to sell in China, you have an MPA to get approval. You want to sell in Japan, you got the Japan authority. US is FDA. FDA tightened their regulation, their requirements. It's still 510K for medical devices, and it's relatively clear process. Europe have changed their regulation last year and moved from MDD to MDR. For a company like myself, MDR is not a problem. the problem is to my notified body. My notified body is a European company who need to take my filing, interpret it, understand it, give me the signature of authority, say you meet all the requirements, and that my CE. They are the one that raised the flag and said, I cannot deal with your file for the next 2 years because I don't have the professional manpower to actually even review your file. So my file will go down in a queue and wait for another 2 years. Now, what do I do in the meanwhile? I don't have a solution. So one solution is to abandon Europe and say, I don't bring product to Europe. The other one is to find a way. The European Council actually made a concession and said, we'll allow you to go on MDD till 2028. In other words, they recognize the problem. So the regulatory is a barrier, and it's very difficult, and it's something that you need to take into account in your business. You got to hire the right people, you got to put the right strategy, and you got to spend the time and money to get there, because regulatory approval equals revenue. That's the way you need to think about it.
Cornelia?
And I do agree that Europe still is rather behind in getting the notified bodies up and running. And that really puts a lot of medtech companies into a struggle, which is certainly not good. So I'm happy to hear, which I didn't know, that they extended to 28 at least to overcome that shortage. On the other side, you said it's regulatory is not advising. I think, yes, you have to obey the rules, but if you're not in the position to hire these highly wanted and not enough on the market people for regulatory, you might as well go with an external advice to at least follow the process in order to get your approvals. And that's where hubs can come in. Like, we have our own regulatory team that helps the startups in our accelerator and also other companies in the cluster to get through the process of CE certification, MDR certification. And we have partners to go on the FDA route. And that's where hubs can come in and help if you can't have your own team or you're just building it.
That's a good example as well. Yael, do you have on the regulatory support or some interesting experience?
Yeah, so yeah, I agree that regulation is a barrier, but I think it's needed. If you are in the way that in the business that we are, the AI business, that you are dealing with data privacy and everything, so you need to have some regulation in order to really be able to operate. So I agree. I think one of the key help that can be given to those startups is in regulation, because regulation is really expensive to pay. But I wanted to actually say a point about your earlier comment, Laurent, about funding these days. So yeah, these 2 years. So we are I think in an AI revolution in some way. Okay, I don't know what artificial intelligence is anymore, because everything is artificial intelligence, right? But I think, as in many industries in the life science market, there was a lot of investment in creating data, aggregating data, having the data in the right place, but almost nothing on getting insights from the data. And I think this is not particularly in the life sciences. Every industry starts with aggregating data, having a lot of GPUs and a lot of storage, and now we are at the stage in which we need to get insights from the data, because otherwise it will be very, very expensive to get all the data and not having insights. So I think that funding those startups that are using whatever, AI, machine, whatever, in order to get insights from the data is what it's needed today. Okay. Other than that, it will be not good, because the cost of creating data is so high, and if we don't get good use of the data, those companies will go down. So if I would like to give an advice to those that are funding those companies, I think finding the companies that are getting insights from the data in life science, which is quite complex, I think those should be prioritized.
It's an interesting angle because you are working in the field for a while. Going beyond the very specific support in life science, we discussed when we prepared about how the hubs can help addressing other challenges that are. Shlomo talked about the production and manufacturing supply chain, but there is as well energy issue, transportation issue, even climate change that are impacting the business. Did you see any involvement or direct support towards those external issues to help the companies, or is it something that is handled, or it's just everyone trying to figure out how to solve them? You have any?
I think there's a yes and no. I think on a company level, you're probably left alone for your own conscience to decide what you should do and should not do, in a sense of being meeting the ESG goals. I think from a policy and initiative level, again with the coming up with the IPCEI, of course there's a component of that, because we cannot continue spending 16 weeks on a boat traveling around the world just to overcome potential tax burdens. So there is initiatives that, again, top down, that addresses this. Whether these are then successful, time will tell. And obviously you will also need to promote it and communicate it so people know what's going on and can use that bottom up as well. But I think it's too early to say whether these are actually driven or should be driven by the public, or whether they should be coming from the bottom up.
Good answer. Cornelia?
Well, really taking it from our own hub, all I can say that is that we are really trying to help life science companies to get better settled, which means that we are just started to build another 60,000 square meters of life science centers in Leipzig that should be ready by 2025. And they are, of course, being like latest stage labs as well as ESG conform buildings. So we can help with that and normalized rates of getting in.
I'm not surprised. No, of course, if you have a new setup, it should be ESG compliant, and it makes sense. Yes, maybe because we have a very diverse panel, I'll be happy. We have 5 minutes left to take any question related to the topic or to the experience of the panelists. I'll be really happy to have.
We have one
to
right
hear you.
here. Thanks, Cesar, my name. I have a question for you, Cornelia. You mentioned about, the research is going from one grant to the other, and then the next one, and just trying to, and I see that also with my startup, where we have two persons from academia who are much more into we need to get a grant and so on, which is useful, because I think one of the challenges, and I don't know how you look at it, one of the challenges is if in life science, or we're in life science, if we want to work with hospitals or we want to work academia, it gets, people are not really keen, because for them, public money is much more, valuable for a professor on his CV than actually working with a startup or with a bigger company. So they'd rather have public money, which is a grant. So that's, I think, where I see a challenge is, because they are also incentivized to have this on their CV, rather than saying, hey, I have worked with this startup, or I have worked with this pharmaceuticals, and I got 2 million for a study or so. I don't know if you have. I think that's something that is probably also something that needs to be tackled to change. And that might be, I don't know about US, might mean US is just much better probably to accept that, you work with companies to evolve and bring innovation.
I think Christina's going to have the same opinion I have. I've been working out of my VC eyes, and I always look at things also from kind of an investor view, having worked in that area for the last 16 years. This is a whole new discussion we need to start, and the discussion would be around what do you on education. Like, scientific people should be educated while they study on entrepreneurship if they want to go this route. And I have experienced too many times where the professor's child is much more worse than the commercial person coming in to bring this child actually to the street to make revenues with it. So I think there needs to be a mindset shift in putting them on equal terms, whereas grants are important, yes, but other funding coming in to really make a company big and scalable is as important as the other part. And as long as we don't, and that's especially in Germany too, where we don't implement these fundamental issues into education on university level, we're going to have that problem of viewing the world as we do, especially in life science.
Yeah, and echoing on that, we work with, in the organization, we work obviously both from on educating, innovation, and business creation. So we kind of address the whole ecosystem. Working with universities, it's very important that you help them understand what the real KPIs, which should be, how many patients can we actually target with this particular innovation that we are trying to bring forward, and not necessarily how much funding do we retrieve. That is currently the case. The initial program manager that you're working with, the only thing they're interested in is, driving their KPIs, which is how much funding can I attract. And that is an educational mind shift change. That is not something you as a company can obviously do, but this is something that has to come at a much higher level. Again, lobbying for my own organization, carefully. This is a top-down, but it's more than just, a one-front battle here.
Another question, we have time, please.
Thank you. So on that note, is this filtering process not rigorous enough to dissect between the good ones and the bad ones, and what just sort of everyone gets funding as long as it creates jobs and it's good for science, but it's a dead duck at the end of the day?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of a lost potential because the real business case was not developed early on, and then you end up having spent too much money and it becomes too expensive. That doesn't mean the technology is not good and could have reached the market, but the strategy to reach it is not good enough. There's certainly also a lot of, you call it lame dogs, or I call it dead horses in the stable.
Same.
Same. So I think it's a combination of many things. But I think if we can think more product-oriented from the beginning, there will be people who are driven by incentives that are maybe not so product-focused. They won't even start, and there's plenty of room for that also in academia, and it's important. But what we take out and spin out into a solution, and what we support and foster going forward should obviously be with the single goal of reaching the patient and providing a benefit. And if that is not there, then we shouldn't support it. That's my personal opinion.
Well,
Quick note to that too. What I always experience is when it comes to transfer centers from university or institutes, the people who are sitting in there are most likely not very commercially driven either. They are rather academic, and then they really push those dead horses, whereas that would be the moment to really see, okay, does it have a market? Is there a need? Do we really want to carve that out into a company?
so we will finish with this horse and dogs. I really want to thank you to all panelists for the nice insights and experience, and wish you a nice evening for the rest of the conference. Thank you.